Have you ever been in a moment where someone's words cut through you, not because they were right, but because they were louder, sharper, more relentless? You felt the weight of their voice pressing down, as if truth belonged to whoever shouted hardest. In that silence that follows, you questioned yourself, not your logic, but your strength to stand without raising your own voice. I've seen this scene play out many times. At work, in families, in friendships. The battle is rarely about facts. It's about control of the air between you. And most people think that volume equals victory, but it doesn't. The Stoics understood something different. Power is not in the shout, it's in the pause, not in fire, but in stillness. True authority is felt when your words are steady enough to make the other person stop, even for a heartbeat. So what if you could respond in such a way that the noise collapses into silence? Stay with me, because the art of saying less but saying it right may change the way people listen to you forever. As we step into the first chapter of this journey, imagine the sudden weight of a room where someone's voice cuts through the air like a blade. The table shakes, their words pound harder than their logic, and everyone feels the pressure of volume mistaken for truth. In moments like these, it's easy to believe that the loudest person holds the power. But deep down, you know that real authority has nothing to do with decibels. Now imagine you are in that meeting, or standing in the kitchen with a family member, or simply crossing paths with a stranger on the street. The argument begins to rise like a storm. Their tone climbs higher, sharper, demanding you match their fire. Your heartbeat quickens, the temptation to strike back swells. But here's the quiet truth the Stoics understood. The moment you let their volume set the rhythm, you've already surrendered your ground. So instead of feeding the flames, you let a calmness anchor you. You breathe. You look them in the eye and say, steady and firm, I don't need to raise my voice to be right. The words are simple, but their weight shifts the whole dynamic. You've just chosen reason over rage. You've chosen clarity over chaos. And in that instant, they feel it too. Epictetus warned that he who cannot control his tongue will be a slave to his emotions. He wasn't speaking about repression. He was speaking about freedom, the kind of freedom that comes when you decide your voice will not be dragged into every storm that passes. To master your tongue is to master yourself, and in that mastery you command more respect than any shout could ever win. Think of how often the world rewards the wrong display of power. In politics, in boardrooms, in heated family dinners, it is often the loudest who seems to dominate. But dominance is not the same as respect. It is only noise, momentary and hollow. Respect is quieter. It emerges when people witness someone who doesn't break under the heat of emotion, who refuses to mirror chaos with chaos. Respect flows to the one who remains composed while others unravel. I remember watching a colleague lose his temper in front of an entire team. His words filled the room like thunder, demanding obedience. For a while, everyone fell silent, not out of agreement, but out of fear. Then another man, calm and deliberate, waited for the storm to pass. He did not match the anger, he did not try to outshout. He simply spoke that one line, I don't need to raise my voice to be right. The effect was profound. The room shifted, eyes turned toward him, not toward the one shouting. Without theatrics, without noise, he became the leader in that moment. This is mental dominance. The battlefield has changed. You are no longer trapped in their game of volume. You have invited them onto your ground, a ground ruled by composure, clarity, and presence. You've turned the clash of fire into a demonstration of stillness, and stillness, when chosen deliberately, carries a force that even rage cannot touch. Seneca once wrote, "To speak in anger is like hurling a spear without aim. Shouts are wild spears, thrown blindly, wounding both the thrower and the one they strike. But calm words are arrows aimed with precision. They pierce deeper because they are not frantic. They are chosen, and people feel the difference." Picture yourself in your own story. A family member hurls accusations across the table. They expect you to fire back, to prove your point louder than theirs. Instead, you answer with calm, "I don't need to raise my voice to be right." What happens next? Their fire falters. The audience, whether it's your children, your colleagues, or even the stranger at the cafe, sees who truly holds strength. Not the one who shouts, but the one who does not need to. This response is not about silencing the other person in humiliation. It is about silencing the game itself. You step out of their arena and make them realize there is another measure of power, the measure of self-control, the measure of composure. And in that space, you win, not by crushing them, but by standing taller without noise. The Stoics believed that storms are tests. They reveal not the storm itself, but the sailor who must steer through it. A ship cannot stop the winds, but the captain can control the wheel. In the same way, you cannot stop others from shouting, but you can choose how you stand within the sound. By holding your course, you prove what real leadership looks like. There is also a subtle gift in this phrase. It teaches others by example. When people watch you stand calm in the middle of verbal fire, they learn something about themselves. They see that there is another way, a stronger way. It may not be immediate, but seeds are planted. The next time they might remember your composure and choose silence instead of rage. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who led an empire, wrote in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The raised voice of another is only noise. It becomes power only if you grant it. By reclaiming that estimate, you revoke their control. You remind yourself and everyone else that truth is not louder for being shouted. So when you speak this line, when you say it with serenity, with eyes steady and heart anchored, you are not just ending an argument. You are rewriting the terms of engagement. You are saying, I am not here to be dragged into your storm. I am here to stand in my own clarity. And in that clarity, others will notice. Colleagues will see, children will learn, strangers will remember. Because nothing unsettles the one who shouts more than realizing their noise has no grip on you. Here is where the deeper power lies. You don't just silence the person, you awaken the room. You show that true strength does not rush, it does not shout, it does not lose itself. When the noise swells again, anchor yourself. Let clarity, not volume, carry your truth. The storm may rage, but you are not the storm. You are the anchor. You are the calm in the chaos. And everyone, even the one who shouted, will feel the difference. And from here, we step into the next response, where silence becomes a mirror, and where words, once again, reveal more about the speaker than the one they try to wound. Moving into the second chapter, imagine the sting of words that were never meant to build you, only to break you. Sarcasm slips in like a dagger disguised as humor. Mockery echoes across the room, and contempt drips from every syllable. You feel it, that sharp twist inside, the urge to fire back with equal venom. That's the trap. That's where most people lose themselves. But here is the moment where clarity cuts through. Instead of rising to their level, you hold the mirror. You let them see themselves. And the words that become your shield are simple. The way you speak says more about you than it does about me. Now picture this. Someone makes a comment designed to wound you. The silence that follows is heavy. Everyone is waiting for you to snap, to defend, to retaliate, but you don't. You look them in the eye, calm, steady, and drop the line. In that instant, they are no longer attacking you. They are confronting themselves. Their own voice, turned back on them, becomes the weight they now carry. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This phrase is the living embodiment of that wisdom. You're not fighting back on their terms. You're refusing to descend into the mud. You're showing that their disrespect says nothing about your worth and everything about their character. That is not weakness. That is elegance. I recall a dinner years ago where a man tried to humiliate me in front of others. His words were sharp, laced with arrogance. The old version of me would have snapped, would have struck back and escalated the fire. But that night, I simply said, "The way you speak says more about you than it does about me." The table fell quiet. His smirk vanished. And the conversation shifted, not because I fought harder, but because I refused to fight at all. He heard himself. And sometimes, hearing your own tone is more devastating than any insult hurled back. This is the lesson the Stoics carried across centuries. Epictetus, once a slave and later a teacher of emperors, taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The words themselves may bruise, but the reaction, that is where the battle is either lost or won. Respond with venom, and you chain yourself to the same ugliness. Respond with clarity, and you remind the world who actually holds the frame. Think about the scripts people expect. They insult, and they wait for anger. They mock, and they wait for defense. It's a performance they've rehearsed, a play they know by heart. But when you refuse to play your role, the script collapses. You change the story, and with it, you change the dynamic. That's what true strength looks like. Look at Marcus Aurelius again, a man who carried the weight of an empire, yet never surrendered his composure. His serenity wasn't passivity, it was power. Whoever governs themselves governs the moment. Serenity is the weapon then and now. We live in a world that rewards quick reactions. Everyone wants the last word, the sharpest comeback, the viral retort. But those who can pause, those who can respond with precision rather than impulse, they stand apart. They are remembered. They carry a presence that cuts deeper than volume ever could. Seneca warned us clearly. To speak in anger is like shooting an arrow without aiming. Words launched without thought can pierce trust, fracture bonds, and close doors you may never reopen. That's why this phrase isn't about humiliation. It's about guarding your dignity with elegance. It's about setting a boundary without needing to build a wall of rage. Now imagine again, this time, it's not an enemy, but a friend who slips into contempt. Perhaps it's a family member who speaks harshly in a moment of stress. The temptation to mirror their tone is strong, but then you breathe and you remind yourself, the way you speak says more about you than it does about me. The power of those words is not just in silencing them, it's in reminding yourself that you don't have to carry their shadow. You can let them own what belongs to them. Here's where the deeper freedom lies. When you refuse to let their attitude define your response, you reclaim the right to be who you choose to be. You prove to yourself and to the world that you are not a reflection of other people's disrespect. You are a reflection of your own discipline. This is not easy. It takes practice to pause when the blood rises, to speak with calm when everything inside wants to explode. But every time you succeed, you grow stronger. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you remind yourself that your worth is not on trial in someone else's courtroom. The truth is this: you don't need to shout to win. You don't need to prove yourself in the mud of petty battles. You only need to respond with precision, with presence, with words that leave no room for doubt. That is how you disarm the critic. That is how you lead, even in conflict. And here's the paradox: they may never admit it, but the person who tried to wound you will feel the weight of your restraint. They expected a fight, and instead met a mirror. And mirrors are unforgiving. So let these words settle in your bones. Let them be the shield you carry into every encounter where disrespect tries to find you. The way you speak says more about you than it does about me. Say it with calm, with clarity, and with quiet authority. Because when you do, you're no longer arguing, you're leading. And from here, we move forward into the next response, one that raises the standard even higher, demanding that respect becomes the very condition for dialogue itself. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the heat of an argument that isn't really an argument at all. Words fly like arrows, but they're not aimed at understanding. They're meant to wound. Someone cuts you off before you finish a thought. They raise their voice, drown out your words, and impose their version of truth as though it were the only one allowed in the room. You can feel it. The conversation has stopped being a dialogue. It has become a battlefield. Now imagine the pull of that moment. Every instinct tells you to push harder, to fight fire with fire, to reclaim the ground by raising your tone. But something inside you whispers a different way. You pause, you breathe, and instead of joining the storm, you say calmly but firmly, "Let's talk when we can do it respectfully." At first, silence may follow. They might stare at you, confused, expecting you to keep playing the game, but with that one line, you've shifted the axis of the entire exchange. The fight is no longer about who's right or who's louder. It's about the basic condition for a conversation to matter at all: respect. Without it, nothing else is worth discussing. This is not retreat. It's principle. It's not weakness. It's strength. Because to walk away from noise is not to surrender. It's to raise the standard. You've just declared that your dignity is not for sale at the price of someone else's aggression. Epictetus once taught, "You cannot control what others do, but you can control what you accept." That wisdom lives in this phrase. You can't stop people from shouting, from interrupting, from trying to twist the air with hostility, but you can decide that you will not accept it. You can decide that no one has the right to drag you into a dirty game. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I watched a friend argue with his brother. It started with a small disagreement, but within minutes, it spiraled into a storm. Insults, interruptions, raised voices. My friend tried to argue point for point, but the harder he tried, the worse it got. Then I saw something shift. He stopped mid-sentence, stood taller, and said quietly, "Let's talk when we can do it respectfully." He walked out of the room. His brother was left speechless, mid-rant, with no opponent left to wrestle. The fight ended, not with victory or defeat, but with a boundary so clear it could not be ignored. That's the power of this phrase. It doesn't humiliate. It doesn't inflame. It holds up a line that cannot be crossed. And when someone crosses it, they're the one who looks small, not you. Think of what it means in a world like ours, where quick tempers and louder voices often win attention. Most people are addicted to noise. They mistake aggression for conviction. But real conviction doesn't need to shout. Real conviction sets the terms. And the terms are simple: respect first, or nothing follows. Marcus Aurelius, in the chaos of ruling an empire, wrote in his Meditations, "If someone despises me, that's their concern. My concern is not to do anything despicable." He knew that the measure of a man is not in how much disrespect he endures, but in whether he lowers himself to the same level. The moment you say, "Let's talk," when we can do it respectfully, you embody that same principle. You refuse to mirror ugliness. You remain whole. What happens next is remarkable. Often the person who came at you with fire begins to see themselves differently. They hear their own tone, they recognize their lack of composure, and sometimes they fall silent, not because you defeated them, but because you held up a standard they weren't prepared to face. Of course, not everyone will admit it. Some will stew in their frustration, but even then, you've won, because you've kept your peace, you've guarded your energy, you've refused to give the keys of your mood to someone else's temper. Seneca reminded us, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." When you stay in arguments that are only noise, you suffer more than you should. But when you step out, when you raise the bar, you protect yourself from carrying a battle that was never worth fighting. There is also something profoundly inspiring in this response. When others watch you say it, they see courage. They see someone who values respect enough to walk away from its absence. In a meeting, in a family quarrel, even in the mess of social media, your refusal to engage without respect becomes a light for others. It shows them there is another way, one that doesn't sacrifice dignity for the thrill of winning a point. Ask yourself this. How many relationships, how many friendships, how many chances at peace have been destroyed because people refused to pause, because they kept speaking when respect had already left the room? One phrase, chosen at the right moment, could have changed everything. So, carry this line with you, not as a shield of avoidance, but as a banner of principle. Let's talk when we can do it respectfully. Say it with calm. Say it with clarity. Say it when the noise grows unbearable, and let it be the doorway back to dialogue, because here's the truth. Whoever cannot speak with respect loses the privilege of speaking with you, and the one who keeps that standard is the one who truly leads. From here, we step toward the next response, where silence itself becomes the shield, and the act of closing a conversation becomes the greatest declaration of strength. Here's where the weight of silence becomes heavier than the sharpest word. You know the feeling. The argument has gone in circles. The other person isn't listening. They're not reaching for truth. They're reaching for victory, even if it means cutting you open to get there. Every phrase they throw is dipped in poison, and you can feel your patience unraveling, thread by thread. In that moment, most people explode. They let anger dictate the final act. But the Stoic path offers another kind of ending, an ending built not on fire, but on clarity. You breathe, you steady yourself, and you say with calm conviction, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. It's simple, it's clean, and it lands like a blade of light cutting through fog. No defense, no justification, just a boundary drawn in stone." Now imagine it. Someone across from you keeps pressing, keeps provoking, keeps twisting the knife. They want you restless, they want you reactive. Instead, you meet their chaos with serenity. You deliver the line and then step back into stillness. What happens? The game collapses. Their theater has no audience anymore. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." That wisdom sits at the heart of this response. You are not surrendering. You are choosing. You are choosing your peace over their noise, your energy over their game, your dignity over their victory. Think of it like closing a door, not a slam of anger, but the slow, deliberate turn of a key. The message is unmistakable. This space is no longer open for violation. And sometimes the act of closing that door is the most powerful gesture you can make. I remember a time when a colleague made it his mission to needle me in every meeting. Sarcasm, interruptions, smirks designed to provoke. One day, as he circled again, I felt my temper rising. But instead of entering his arena, I paused. I looked at him, not with fire, but with calm, and said, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation." The room went still. He tried to laugh it off, but there was nothing left to hit. The arrow he had drawn lost its target, and from that day, he never tried the same tricks again. That is the hidden force of restraint. It severs the cycle. It reminds both you and them that your worth is not bound to endless arguments, that you will not bleed just to prove you're alive. Seneca warned us, "A thoughtless word can ignite a quarrel." The reverse is also true. A deliberate refusal can extinguish one. To walk away from noise is not cowardice, it is clarity. It is knowing that the last word has never been as valuable as your lasting peace. When others witness this, something shifts. They see that your silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. They see that refusing to be dragged deeper is not weakness, it's mastery. And slowly they begin to understand that control doesn't belong to the one shouting. It belongs to the one who decides when the conversation ends. Our culture loves to glorify the comeback, the clever retort, the mic drop ending. But the greatest mic drop is the refusal to perform in their circus at all, to end the act before it consumes your energy, to walk away with your head held high, not because you were defeated, but because you refused to be diminished. Let's be honest, this isn't always easy. There's a hunger inside us that wants the last word, wants to land the decisive blow. But what if the decisive blow is the absence of one? What if the act of disengagement leaves them holding their own hostility, with no place to throw it but back onto themselves? That's when they feel the weight of what they've created. This phrase is not about running, it's about rising. It's about choosing not to let someone else decide the terms of your peace. It's about reminding yourself and them that a conversation without respect isn't a conversation at all, it's noise, and you refuse to live in noise. So carry this shield with you. Use it when provocation drags on, when words become weapons, when the dialogue has turned to ash. Say it once. Say it clearly. Say it with the calm of someone who knows that peace is more valuable than victory. I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. Let the silence that follows be your victory. Let the closed door be your declaration. Because the one who can end the storm on their own terms is the one who truly holds power. And from this strength, we move to the final response, one that balances respect with independence, allowing you to stand firm without hostility and to walk through conflict with your head unbowed. Entering the final chapter. Picture a moment, not of hostility, but of closeness. You're sitting across from someone you care about, a friend, a colleague, a family member. The air isn't charged with anger, it's filled with persistence. They keep insisting, pressing, nudging you to see the world exactly as they do. Perhaps they think they're helping, perhaps they believe they're saving you from a mistake. But underneath their insistence lies a quiet violation. They are crossing into your ground without noticing. Now imagine how subtle that pressure feels. It isn't the loud shout of an enemy. It's the steady push of someone who won't take no for an answer. A decision you don't want to make. A belief you don't share. A judgment you don't consider fair. And in that moment, silence won't save you. Silence feels like surrender. Point-by-point argument won't save you either. It will only pull you into endless debate. What saves you is a phrase that is both firm and respectful. That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it. It may sound simple, but simplicity is often where the deepest power hides. Because when you say it, you're not dismissing them. You're not mocking them. You're not yielding either. You're standing in your own space, acknowledging theirs, but refusing to trade away your independence. It is a line drawn in velvet, not stone. Soft to the touch, but immovable once placed. Think of the quiet shift that happens next. The other person hears you. They realize you've given them dignity. You've respected their right to speak, but you've also affirmed your own right to think differently. There is no room left to attack because you didn't tear them down. You didn't seek to win. You sought only to define. And definition itself is enough. Seneca once warned, "To be a slave to the opinion of others is the worst of all prisons." How many people live in that prison, nodding when they disagree, bending when they want to stand, hiding their judgment because they fear disapproval? Every time you use this phrase, you turn the key in that lock. You remind yourself that you have the courage to walk free. I remember sitting in a cafe with an old friend. He wanted me to join him in a business venture I knew in my gut wasn't right for me. He leaned in, passionate, almost pleading, listing all the reasons why I should follow his plan. In the past, I would have smiled, nodded, maybe even pretended to agree just to keep the peace. But that day, I chose differently. I looked at him and said, "That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it." He blinked, sat back, and for the first time that afternoon, he was silent. Not offended, not angry, just silent. And in that silence, my independence was clear. This is the gift of emotional independence. It doesn't roar, it doesn't argue, it simply refuses to be bent. And when people see that in you, something surprising happens. They respect you more, because deep down, even the most insistent people admire those who cannot be pressured into surrender. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire filled with clashing voices, reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you affirm your stance without hostility, you are practicing that very lesson. You are saying, "My mind is my own. My judgment is my own." And strength is nothing more than living aligned with that truth. There is a kind of magic in these words. They transform the tone of the entire conversation. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. No more chasing approval. No more defending yourself endlessly, just calm clarity. It is the kind of presence that lingers in people's memory long after the words fade. Ask yourself this: how many times have you lost hours, days, even years, trying to justify your choices to people who could never live them for you? How often have you surrendered your peace for the comfort of someone else's agreement? That is the real cost of avoiding this phrase, and that is why it matters so deeply to learn it, to use it, to embody it. There is strength in confrontation, but there is greater strength in gentle defiance, in looking someone in the eye and saying, "I honor your view, but I walk my own path." That balance of respect without submission is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. So let these words become part of your armor. Use them with those closest to you, the ones who may not mean harm, but who press too far. Use them in the workplace when colleagues try to make their judgment the law of your choices. Use them anywhere your voice risks being drowned out by good intentions turned forceful. That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it. Let that line remind you that freedom is not found in winning every argument. Freedom is found in owning your judgment, even if you stand alone, because you are never truly alone when you stand with truth. And now, as we step back and look at the 5 responses together, the picture becomes clear. These are not tricks. They are not weapons for humiliation. They are disciplines of dignity. Each one teaches you how to defend your ground without losing your calm, how to silence noise without raising your voice, and how to lead not by force, but by character. 5 responses that do more than protect you. They strengthen you. They remind you that respect is not imposed. It is inspired. And the one who inspires it is always the one who first masters themselves. 5 phrases, spoken with serenity, confidence, and clarity, have the power to quiet even the loudest voices. They do not silence others because you crushed them, but because you chose to rise above. Respect is never forced by noise. It is born from the character of one who governs themselves. Let us call them to mind once more. I do not need to raise my voice to be right. The way you speak says more about you than it does about me. Let us talk when we can do it respectfully. I would prefer not to continue this conversation. That is your opinion, and I respect it, but I do not share it. These lines are not clever tricks. They are shields of dignity. They allow you to step away from chaos without abandoning your ground. They remind you that peace is not surrender. Peace is strength when it is chosen deliberately. When you bring these responses into your life, the change becomes clear. People begin to listen more carefully. They hesitate before throwing careless words in your direction. They sense a presence that cannot be easily provoked. You are no longer a target for manipulation. You are no longer someone who can be pulled into battles that are not worth fighting. Instead, you become someone others respect. Not because you shouted louder, but because you carried calm when others carried fire. Not because you dominated, but because you held steady when others lost themselves. That steadiness is what people notice, and it is what lingers in their memory long after the conversation ends. There will always be moments when the temptation to argue is strong, but each time you choose one of these phrases, you train your mind to rise above. You prove that real authority is not the ability to control another person. Real authority is the discipline to remain in control of yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what disturbs us is not the event itself, but the judgment we attach to it. A raised voice is only sound until you decide to give it weight. Disrespect is only an attempt until you decide to accept it. By practicing these 5 responses, you remind yourself that you always hold that choice. So let these words be part of your daily practice. Speak them with clarity, live them with conviction. Let them be the quiet signal that your peace is no longer negotiable. If this message has spoken to you, subscribe so you can continue walking this path of calm strength. And in the comments, write 3 words: silent but strong. Your journey is far from over. The next step will take you deeper into the art of commanding respect with presence alone. Keep going. The calm you carry today will become the voice that shapes your tomorrow.